Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. By now, I'm sure that most of you have heard that last night, their news broke. The SEC is no longer going after Ethereum. They're not going to sue Consensus, and presumably that means they're also not going to sue any of the other companies that they sent Wells notices to. Just a quick reminder, Wells notices are documents that the SEC sends out to companies to prove that they're complete douchebag pricks. And they indicate that they are going to sue whatever company is the recipient of the Wells notice. So my expectation until recently is that the SEC absolutely was going to follow through with this, because they almost never do send out Wells notices and then end up not following through. Now, of course, things have been a little interesting over the last few weeks, haven't they? If you look at what's, just the posturing, not behavior as much, but the posturing from the Biden administration, from the top on down, they've done a complete 180. Now, I'm not saying behaviorally they've done a complete 180, but the way that they're communicating. So maybe it could just be a facade, whatever. But once that started happening, it started to become a lot more reasonable to suppose that actually maybe they're not going to go through with taking down all the Ethereum folks. And it ends up that's exactly what happened. So, as a result, we get headlines like the one on your screen here from the Crypto Basic. SEC permanently suspends Ethereum investigation. Will Ripple be next? Ah, yes, indeed. Is Ripple also going to get a free pass? Well, we'll talk about that. I'll just tell you here at the outset of the video, my personal and humble opinion is no. I could just stop there. No. That's it. That's it. The video's over. That's it. That's the hot jam. That's it. But before going further, I do want to be clear. I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so to get you all caught up to speed in case you missed it, here is where the news broke last night from the official Consensus Twitter account, well, X account now. And Consensus, of course, is a firm, founded by Joe Lubin, who is also one of the founders of Ethereum. And Consensus is designed to push all things Ethereum in terms of development activity, so on and so forth. And they did receive a Wells notice a couple months back from the SEC. And now they've gotten what appears to be a second free pass from the SEC. Check this out. So here's what Consensus wrote, and it's been seen 5.1 million times, understandably a very popular topic. They write, Ethereum survives the SEC. Today we're happy to announce a major win for Ethereum developers, technology providers, and industry participants. The Enforcement Division of the SEC has notified us that it is closing its investigation into Ethereum 2.0. This means that the SEC will not bring charges alleging that sales of ETH are securities transactions. The decision follows a letter we sent on June 7th asking the SEC to confirm that the May ETH ETF approvals, which were premised on ETH being a commodity, meant the agency would close its Ethereum 2.0 investigation. And so I have to say this, given that the SEC did a complete 180 on at least in the way they were posturing, so fine. We don't know exactly what was being said behind, or at all, what was being said behind closed doors at the SEC as it pertained to a potential ETH ETF. But given the posturing of the entire current administration and what the SEC has been saying from Gary Gensler on down, it was widely accepted to be a virtual certainty that we would not get an ETH ETF. They flipped on that, though, which was absolutely amazing. And I spoke about that a lot at the time. Really mind-blowing stuff. It happens to be an election year. Maybe that's got something to do with it. Just saying, maybe it's got a little tiny baby boo bit to do with it. So we got that. But since that happened, it made it much more plausible to think, well, maybe they're actually not going to follow through with this Ethereum lawsuit, against Consensus and the Ethereum Foundation and whoever the hell else they sent these Wells notices to. Well, I'm kind of, to be honest with you, it's not that it was as surprising given the recent developments in recent weeks and with the ETH ETF getting approved by the SEC. It's not as big a surprise as it otherwise would have been. But I still find myself sometimes, and I did last night, sitting there, just sitting like, stunned, not because it's unbelievable, because we already saw they did the 180, but it's more like it's just amazing that this is a real thing that's really happening in real life, because it's so absurd. My freaking God, talk about like whimsically taking positions. Holy freaking hell. Anyway, Consensus continues. The closing of the Ethereum investigation is momentous, but it's not a cure-all for the many blockchain developers, technology providers, and industry participants who have suffered under SEC's unlawful and aggressive crypto enforcement regime. Our fight continues in our lawsuit. Where'd it go? My screen just jumped. Don't know why that happened. In our fight continues. In our lawsuit, we also seek a declaration that offering the user interface software MetaMask swaps and staking does not violate the securities laws. It should not take a lawsuit to provide the much-needed regulatory clarity to allow an industry that serves as the backbone to countless new technologies and innovations to thrive, but here we are. Hashtag ETH for all. And so I'm happy this happened. As far as the free pass nonsense with Billy Boy Hinman back in 2018, and as far as what appears to be a second free pass, believe it or not, absurdity, clearly the SEC playing favorites here, despise that aspect of it, but I don't want, unless they're outright scams, I don't want anybody building in the crypto space to be attacked by bureaucrats in a fat government agency. Attorney Bill Morgan wrote on this topic, Ethereum's second free pass from the SEC almost exactly 6 years after the Hinman free speech. Ethereum's and Ripple's different treatment will forever show how arbitrary the SEC has been in crypto. Yeah, and so folks, sorry to burst your bubble if you're thinking maybe this does mean something for Ripple. I'd love for you to be right, and I'll happily admit I'm wrong with this happens. If they actually get some sort of, they're out of it, it's over, the SEC's like, nah, it's fine now, you guys are cool. No, if that happens, great. But I do not believe for a moment that is remotely plausible. And so we highlighted that, and then there's also Vet, who happens to be an XRP Ledger DUNL validator. He also shared this document. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can pause it and read it if you want to. Other than the part that you highlighted in blue, that's probably worth it. We do not intend to recommend an enforcement action by the Commission against your client Consensus Software. So there you go. But Vet said no SEC enforcement action on Consensus. Interesting detail. The SEC has no obligation to highlight the end of the investigation to a company, but they did here. ETH is not a security. Now, I got to tell you, that I found a rather interesting piece of what's actually happening here. This is not normal. If the SEC is done investigating, then they'll just be done investigating, and you'll never know that they were investigating typically. That's normally what would happen, right? But here, they actually said, oh, no, you all good, bro. Are you kidding me? For real? This is the SEC, dude. How is this real life? What fresh hell is this? Here we have Attorney James Murphy, a.k.a. Meta Lawman, who wrote the following. The SEC lawyers argued repeatedly and successfully in the Coinbase hearing that digital asset plus ecosystem equals security. But now they acknowledge that ETH, a digital asset plus ecosystem, is not a security. So now what? Never mind, just kidding, do-over. It's embarrassing. Now, he is spot on with that. It's a good way, it's a good post to highlight the absurdity of all of this. And the mistreatment of some. Somebody named BC wrote to Meta Lawman and said, Meta, does this decision by the SEC legitimize the ruling last summer in the XRP case? How does this affect the digital asset ecosystem moving forward? And he did respond. Attorney Murphy wrote, fair questions. Quick answer, yes, I think Ripple's position in the event of an appeal is bolstered. And so he's saying there, even if the SEC does choose to come after Ripple, they just made it that much harder for themselves to win on whatever it is that they're going to argue as asshat prick attorneys. So that part's good. So even though I don't believe there's a remote chance even that the SEC is just going to be like, nah, you good, Ripple. Let's just drop all this stuff. Plus, Judge Torres already ruled, so it's probably too late for that anyway, correct? But even in terms of like being like, you know what, Judge, actually, maybe bring that penalty down to $0. No, like I don't think that that's going to be happening here. But even though that is indeed the case, according to Attorney Murphy here, if there's an appeal, it's looking like a bunch of roses for Ripple. You know what I'm saying? Here's a post from Stuart Alderati, who is Ripple's chief legal officer, and he wrote the following: "A big win for ConsenSys. Though questions remain, does this mean the SEC thinks ConsenSys's offer and sales of ETH are not securities transactions, and or that ETH itself is not a security? What will Gensler say if now asked? What is the status of MetaMask and staking?" And so obviously, and he's making great points here, there are a lot of questions here. So the investigation's over. There's an ETH ETF. Well, I mean, it's not live yet, but they've already said it's coming, yes. So what does that mean? So the transactions, they're so not security? They added no clarity whatsoever. They're just doing stuff. And then you had this post from Neil Hartner, who is a Ripple employee, a software engineer on Ripple payments, so dealing with on-demand liquidity stuffs. And he says, the plan, quote, "You're going to say you're investigating us and then shortly later send us a letter that you close the investigation so we can make it public and advertise it on social media." Yep. Well, I mean, I don't know if there's anything that was that coordinated, but this is so absurd and ridiculous, completely unreasonable. If there is something to that idea, which a lot of people are speculating today, and I don't blame you, I will not be surprised if evidence ever comes out that that's the case. It won't surprise me in the least. There's this post from Crypto Insight UK. He was sharing some thoughts on this whole deal and what it might mean for crypto and XRP. And, he made the point that, the ETH news, he thinks, makes it less likely that the SEC will appeal any aspect of the Tor's decision in the SEC v. Ripple lawsuit. And I'll tell you this, I don't know, that may very well be true. And it kind of depends. So, like, the way that I was looking at it is, if indeed there was something shady going on behind the scenes and some sort of coordination, and the reason for all of this happening was just to make sure that ETH is that much regulatory clarity, if you want to call it that. I still say it's not sufficient regulatory clarity, but you know what I'm saying, right? In terms of it having a free pass yet again. If that was the intent, well, that's certainly one thing. And if that's the case, then I don't see why the SEC wouldn't keep coming guns a-blazing at Ripple. But if it's the case that this is driven more so from the top on down, and this is because the current administration has done a 180, at least in the way that they're speaking publicly about crypto, if that's the case, then yeah, maybe it's less likely the SEC would appeal. So it's hard, but there's no way to know for sure. It's pure speculation either way. But he certainly could be right on this. You guys will just have to let me know what you think, but I'm telling you, and I understand why there's discussion on this, but, SEC about to stop going after Ripple because of all this stuff. Nah, I just don't see it, folks. I'm sorry. I wish I could see it. I wish I believed it and that it would make logical sense, but I just don't think it does. You guys tell me if you think I'm wrong, but that's where I'm coming from. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.